H2. Discordant Beginnings. The French Quarter pulsed with life as tourists navigated the narrow streets, cocktails in hand and cameras at the ready. Olivia Blackwood strode purposefully through the crowd, her designer heels clicking against the centuries-old cobblestones. At 35, she commanded attention without trying. Her tailored blazer, sleek bob, and the confident tilt of her chin marked her as someone important, someone with places to be. "Blackwood, the investors are ready whenever you are," her assistant's voice chirped through her earpiece. "I'll be there in 15, Olivia replied, checking her watch. She had orchestrated her morning perfectly, a brief walk to clear her head before the most important pitch of her career. Mindful Me, her wellness app company, was on the verge of securing funding that would value it at $500 million. She turned onto a less crowded side street when the music hit her, a haunting melody that seemed to capture something essential about New Orleans itself, melancholy beauty with undercurrents of hope. Despite her schedule, Olivia slowed. The source was a man seated on a weathered wooden stool, his fingers dancing across guitar strings with effortless precision. His eyes were closed, his expression one of complete immersion. A small crowd had gathered, mesmerized. At his feet lay an open guitar case containing a modest scattering of bills and coins. When the song ended, the crowd applauded. The musician opened his eyes, warm brown with flecks of amber, and smiled. "Thank you kindly," he said, his voice carrying a slight accent Olivia couldn't place. "I'm Julian Reyes, and that was Crescent City Dreams, something I've been working on." As the crowd dispersed, Olivia remained, studying him. Despite his worn jeans and faded t-shirt, there was something dignified about him. "That was beautiful," she said, surprising herself by speaking. "You're very talented." Julian looked up, his expression open and genuine. "Thank you. Music speaks when words fail. Don't you think?" Olivia smiled tightly. "Perhaps, though in my experience, a well-crafted spreadsheet speaks volumes more to investors." Julian laughed, a warm, uninhibited sound. Different languages for different worlds. He gestured to a flyer taped to his guitar case. "I'm collecting to start a music school for kids who can't afford lessons. Every dollar helps build the dream." Olivia glanced at the flyer, noting the crude design and earnest mission statement. Admirable, but unlikely. "Do you have any idea what it costs to lease space in this city? Insurance? Staffing?" "I know the numbers," Julian replied, his smile undimmed. "I also know that some things are worth pursuing regardless of the odds." "Dreams need more than passion," Olivia said, dropping a $20 bill in his case. "They need strategy, capital, and connections." "They also need heart," Julian replied. "Without that, what's the point?" Olivia's phone buzzed. Her investors were waiting. "Good luck with your project," she said, already turning away. "Ms. Blackwood," Julian called after her. She paused, surprised he knew her name. "Sometimes the universe has plans different from our spreadsheets." She laughed, shaking her head. "The universe doesn't plan, Mr. Reyes. People do." With that, she merged back into the flow of the crowd, already rehearsing her pitch, the musician's melody fading behind her. The symphony breaks. 3 months after their chance encounter, Olivia Blackwood stood frozen before the wall of monitors in Mindful Me's downtown office. Every screen displayed the same headline: "Wellness app giant accused of falsifying user improvement data." Her phone buzzed incessantly. Investors, board members, reporters, all demanding explanations she couldn't provide. "How bad is it?" she asked her CTO, Thomas, who stood ashen-faced beside her. "The development team confirmed it," he replied quietly. "Someone internally manipulated the effectiveness metrics we've been reporting to investors." The algorithms were altered to show 40% higher success rates than actual user data supports. "That's impossible," Olivia whispered, though the sinking feeling in her stomach told her otherwise. She'd pushed her team relentlessly for results, created a culture where failure wasn't an option. Had someone felt desperate enough to falsify data rather than disappoint her? Within 48 hours, Mindful Me's stock plummeted 87%. By the end of the week, 3 major investors pulled out. Within 2 weeks, the board forced Olivia's resignation. By the month's end, the company filed for bankruptcy, and her personal assets were frozen pending investigation. The penthouse went first, then the cars. Her friends, the successful entrepreneurs and investors who had populated her dinner parties and yacht weekends, stopped returning her calls. Her assistant of 5 years quit via text message. Across town, in a small apartment above a cafe in the Bywater neighborhood, Julian Reyes stared in disbelief at the email on his cracked phone screen. "I don't understand," he murmured to his roommate, Desiree, a pastry chef who worked nights. "Some anonymous donor just transferred $50,000 to the music school fund." Desiree peered over his shoulder. "Is this legit? Not some scam?" "I verified with the bank. It's real." Julian ran his hands through his hair. "The message just says, 'Music saved my life once. Help it save others.' And it's signed GP. Guardian angel with initials," Desiree said, hugging him. "It's happening, Jules. Your dream is happening." Over the following months, as Olivia sold her designer wardrobe to make rent on a studio apartment in Tremé, Julian secured a lease on a modest storefront in the 7th Ward. While Olivia sat through humiliating job interviews where former peers now treated her with barely disguised contempt, Julian purchased second-hand instruments and put out calls for volunteer teachers. On a rainy Tuesday in November, Olivia received her final rejection, a mid-level marketing position at a company she once would have considered beneath her notice. That same afternoon, Julian hung a hand-painted sign outside his renovated storefront, "Crescent City Music Academy, where every child finds their voice." The universe, it seemed, had plans of its own, after all. That night, Olivia sat alone on her mattress on the floor, scrolling through job listings with increasingly diminished expectations, while across the city, Julian played his guitar for a small gathering of supporters. His heart, full of gratitude and possibility, neither aware that their paths were destined to cross again, in ways neither could imagine. H2 Harmonic Convergence. 6 months after Mindful Me's collapse, Olivia Blackwood's life had become unrecognizable. Her savings depleted, she'd taken a series of temporary positions: restaurant hostess, retail associate, virtual assistant, each ending when employers discovered her notorious past. The woman who once commanded boardrooms now shared a cramped apartment with 2 roommates who barely acknowledged her existence. On a humid March morning, Olivia sat at a corner table in a neighborhood coffee shop, scanning job listings on a laptop she'd managed to keep from the creditors. Her resume, once impressive, now contained strategic omissions and vague descriptions that masked her former status. "Another refill, hun?" The barista, Ramona, asked sympathetically. She'd witnessed Olivia's daily job search ritual for weeks. "I shouldn't," Olivia replied, glancing at her nearly empty wallet. "On the house," Ramona insisted with a warm smile. Ramona insisted, topping off her cup. "Any luck today?" "Not yet," Olivia admitted. "But something has to turn up eventually." "Actually," Ramona said, lowering her voice, "my cousin's kid just started at this new music school in the 7th Ward. They're looking for an administrative assistant. Nothing fancy, but it's steady." Olivia's first instinct was to dismiss it. Administrative assistant was several layers below her qualifications. But necessity had worn away her pride. "Do they have a website?" "Nah, they're just getting started. Here, Ramona scribbled an address on a napkin. They're holding interviews today. Tell them Ramona sent you. An hour later, Olivia stood before a colorful storefront. Crescent City Music Academy, read the sign, with where every child finds their voice, painted beneath it in flowing script. Through the windows, she could see children of various ages holding instruments. Their faces, alive with concentration and joy. A memory stirred. Her own childhood piano lessons, abandoned when her parents decided her time was better spent on academic pursuits. Taking a deep breath, Olivia pushed open the door. The sounds washed over her immediately. A violin being tentatively tuned. A trumpet blasting an enthusiastic, if imperfect, note. Laughter and encouraging words. The space was modest, but thoughtfully arranged. Practice rooms created with movable partitions, walls covered with music-themed artwork, clearly made by young hands. "Can I help you?" A young woman with brightly colored braids approached. "I'm here about the administrative position," Olivia replied, clutching her simplified resume. "Ramona suggested I apply." "Perfect timing. I'm Nia, the volunteer coordinator. We're desperate for someone with organizational skills." The director's in his office, last door on the right. Olivia followed Nia's directions, her heart inexplicably racing. She knocked on the partially open door. "Come in." The voice was familiar, but Olivia couldn't place it until she pushed the door open fully. There, hunched over a desk, covered with papers, and surrounded by instruments, was Julian Reyes. He looked up, and recognition flickered across his face. "Miss Blackwood," he said, surprise evident in his tone. "Mr. Reyes," she replied, fighting the urge to turn and flee. "I didn't realize this was your school." For a moment, Julian said nothing, just studied her with those perceptive eyes. Gone was her power suit, her perfect hair, her aura of untouchable success. She stood before him, in simple jeans and a blouse, clutching a resume, and looking as vulnerable as he'd once been before her. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. "The universe works in mysterious ways, doesn't it? Please, sit down. Tell me why you're interested in joining our little symphony here." And in that moment, as Olivia cautiously took the offered seat, a new movement in their shared composition began. "I need a job," Olivia replied honestly, abandoning the prepared speech about her passion for music education. "And you need administrative help." Julian leaned back in his chair, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Direct. I appreciate that. But why here? Someone with your background could find something more prestigious." Olivia's laugh was hollow. "You haven't been following the news, have you? My company collapsed amid a data scandal. I've been blacklisted from the tech industry. These days I'm lucky to get interviews for retail positions." Understanding dawned on Julian's face. "So the mighty have fallen." "Something like that," she admitted, her cheeks flushing. Julian studied her for a long moment. "What skills would you bring to our school?" "Organization, efficiency, financial management." She hesitated. "I built a $500 million company from nothing. I can certainly organize a music school's filing system." Julian nodded slowly. "The position pays $15 an hour, 20 hours a week for now. It's all we can afford." Olivia blinked back unexpected tears. Once, she wouldn't have gotten out of bed for such an amount. Now it meant survival. "When do I start?" "Composing together." The first weeks were awkward, to say the least. Julian's volunteer teachers, a collection of local musicians, retired music educators, and passionate amateurs, watched Olivia with suspicion as she implemented filing systems, created schedules, and organized the chaos of the fledgling school. "She's too corporate," complained Emilio, the elderly percussion instructor, after Olivia suggested standardized lesson plans. "This isn't a business, it's a community. Give her time. Julian replied, watching as Olivia meticulously color-coded the practice room schedule. She knows systems. We need that. What surprised Julian most was Olivia's dedication. She arrived early, stayed late, and tackled problems with the same intensity she'd once directed toward million-dollar deals. She never mentioned their first meeting, when she'd dismissed his dream so casually, and he never brought it up. One evening, as rain pounded against the windows, Julian found Olivia hunched over the school's meager accounting books, her face tight with concern. "Bad news?" he asked, placing a mug of tea beside her. "At current rates, you'll be out of funds in 3 months," she said without preamble. "Your anonymous donor's gift was generous, but your operating costs exceed your income." Julian sighed, sinking into a chair beside her. "I know. I've been avoiding looking at the numbers." "That's exactly the problem," Olivia said, but without judgment. "You've created something beautiful here, Julian. These children adore you. But passion doesn't pay rent. What would you suggest?" The question surprised them both, him for asking, her for being consulted. "A fundraising concert," she said after a moment's thought. "Showcase your students, invite potential donors. I still have a few contacts who might attend." Julian considered this, then nodded slowly. "You organize it. Full creative control. Show me what the former CEO of Mindful Me can do with a shoestring budget and a dream." The following weeks transformed them both. Olivia threw herself into organizing the concert with the same determination that had once built her company. But this time, her ambition was tempered by the joy she witnessed daily in the school. Each time a child mastered a difficult passage or performed for the first time, something long dormant within her stirred to life. Julian, meanwhile, found himself impressed by Olivia's relentless work ethic and growing devotion to the school. He watched as she patiently taught 7-year-old Deanna how to properly hold a violin, her face soft in a way he'd never seen before. The night before the concert, they worked late finalizing details. Rain again drummed against the windows as they sat surrounded by programs Olivia had designed and printed herself. "Why did you say it would never work?" Julian asked, suddenly. "When we first met, you dismissed this place as impossible." Olivia's hands stilled. "Because in my world, dreams without capital were fairy tales. I couldn't imagine success that wasn't measured in dollars and investors." She looked around at the modest school. "I was wrong." Julian reached across the table and covered her hand with his. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry about what happened to your company." "I'm not," she replied, surprising herself with the truth of it. "Not anymore." Their eyes met, and something electric passed between them. Recognition of two people who had found each other at exactly the right moment, when both were exactly where they needed to be. H2, the final movement. H2. The fundraising concert exceeded all expectations. Students performed with heart-swelling passion, from tiny Deanna's wobbly but determined Twinkle Twinkle to teenager Marcus's hauntingly beautiful original composition. Olivia had transformed the school, with borrowed plants, string lights, and strategically placed fabric, creating an atmosphere of enchanted possibility. When Julian took the stage to perform Crescent City Dreams, the same piece Olivia had first heard him play on the street, the audience fell silent, captivated. As the final note faded, Olivia realized she was crying. The event raised enough money to keep the school operating for another 6 months. But more importantly, it caught the attention of a local arts foundation, whose director approached Olivia afterward. "We've been watching this project with interest," she said, handing Olivia her card. "Submit a formal grant proposal. There's significant funding available for programs like this." Julian and Olivia celebrated that night with cheap champagne in plastic cups, sitting on the school's front steps as the stars appeared overhead. We did it, Julian said, clinking his cup against hers. For now, Olivia cautioned. Grants are competitive. We'll need a compelling proposal. Julian laughed. Always the pragmatist. Can't you just enjoy the moment? She smiled, leaning slightly against his shoulder. I'm trying to learn how. But just as things were looking up, disaster struck. The building owner called Julian with devastating news. He was selling the property, and the new owners planned to convert it into luxury apartments. The school had 60 days to vacate. When Julian shared this news with Olivia, he expected practical solutions. Instead, she sat down heavily, her face stricken. We can't lose this place, she whispered. These children need it. I need it. The raw vulnerability in her voice moved him. Without thinking, he pulled her into his arms, and she didn't resist. We'll figure it out, he promised into her hair, together. The following weeks became a blur of activity. By day, they taught classes and maintained normalcy for the students. By night, they became urban explorers, scouring neighborhoods for affordable spaces, meeting with realtors, crunching numbers, and drafting proposals. It was during one of these late-night sessions that Julian discovered Olivia's secret. This financial projection makes no sense, he said, reviewing her latest spreadsheet. How can we afford this building? Olivia avoided his eyes. I've found additional funding. From where? The grant hasn't been decided yet. After a long pause, she admitted, I sold my engagement ring. And my grandmother's pearls. They were the last valuable things I owned. Julian stared at her in disbelief. Why would you do that? Said, because this matters, she said simply, more than anything I've ever done. The kiss that followed wasn't planned or expected, but it felt inevitable, like the resolution of a complex musical phrase that had been building from the first note. On the final day before they needed to vacate the building, as they packed instruments and sheet music into borrowed vans, Olivia received an email that changed everything. The Arts Foundation had not only approved their grant, but had partnered with a community development organization to offer them a permanent home, a historic building just 3 blocks away, with more space than they currently had, at a subsidized rate, locked in for 10 years. That evening, standing in their empty original space, Julian pulled out his guitar. One last song for this place, he said, beginning to play a melody Olivia hadn't heard before. What's that called? She asked when he finished. Second Movements, he replied. I started writing it the day you came looking for a job. Olivia smiled, taking his hand. I like it, but I think our story is just beginning. 6 months later, the Crescent City Music Academy celebrated the opening of its new location. As cameras flashed and supporters applauded, a reporter asked how the school had survived its near collapse. Julian gazed at Olivia, who stood beside him, her hand firmly in his. It happened when a former tech executive and a street musician realized that success isn't measured by wealth, he said. It's measured by purpose, community, and love. Olivia squeezed his hand. Once she had laughed at his dream. Now it had become their shared reality. A symphony still unfolding, more beautiful than either could have composed alone.